The vast emptiness of space held many secrets, but none more terrifying than the Vorthak hunting fleets. Their black ships moved through the darkness like silent death, leaving behind empty worlds and broken civilizations. For over 4,000 years, these massive reptilian warriors had ruled the galaxy through fear and superior firepower. Commander Thakmor stood in the center of his flagship's command deck, his 9-foot frame covered in thick scales that had turned dark green with age. Deep scars crossed his chest and arms, each one representing a different species he had conquered. His yellow eyes, cold as winter ice, scanned the holographic display showing their next target. The Vorthak had perfected the art of hunting intelligent life across the stars. Their method was brutally simple and effective. First, they would study a new world from a distance, learning about its inhabitants and their weaknesses. Then came the invasion, swift and overwhelming. The strongest members of each species were captured for their arena games, while the rest were either enslaved or eliminated entirely. Finally, they would strip the planet of valuable resources before moving on to their next victim. "Commander, our long-range scouts have detected something interesting," announced Lieutenant Vextar, his clawed hands dancing across the control panel. A small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. The inhabitants appear to be in their early industrial phase. Thakmor's mouth curved into what might have been a smile, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Show me the details." The main display flickered to life, revealing a beautiful blue and green world orbiting a yellow star. Cities dotted the continents, connected by networks of lights that pulsed with electromagnetic activity. The planet seemed peaceful, almost defensively so. "They call themselves humans," Vextar continued, reading from his scanner data. "Bipedal mammals, average height around 6 feet, no natural armor or weapons to speak of. They appear to have recently developed nuclear technology and primitive spaceflight." Other Vorthak warriors gathered around the display, their excitement growing as they studied the new prey. These creatures looked soft and weak compared to the armored behemoths of Kepler 442b or the acid-spitting hunters of Proxima Centauri c. This would be an easy hunt, a pleasant break from their more challenging conquests. "Their military technology is crude," added another officer, highlighting various human weapon systems. "Kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives, basic energy weapons, nothing that could threaten our ship's armor." But while the Vorthak fleet prepared for another routine conquest, life continued normally on the small blue world they had marked for destruction. In the mountains outside Seoul, a man named Minho was working under the hood of his old truck, cursing softly as he tried to replace a stubborn spark plug. The former Arok army sergeant had no idea that alien sensors were already cataloging his world's defenses and finding them pathetically inadequate. The evening sky was clear and beautiful, filled with stars that seemed to twinkle with unusual brightness. Minho paused in his work, wiping grease from his hands as he looked up at the constellation patterns he had known since childhood. Something felt different tonight, though he couldn't quite put his finger on what it was. Hundreds of miles away, in her laboratory in Busan, marine biologist Sora was working late again, studying water samples from the deep ocean trenches. Her computer screens cast a blue glow across her tired face as she analyzed data that might hold the key to understanding how life survived in Earth's most extreme environments. She had no way of knowing that this very research would soon become crucial to humanity's survival. The Vorthak fleet moved closer to Earth's solar system, their stealth technology making them invisible to human detection methods. Thakmor reviewed the battle plans with cold satisfaction. They would begin with isolated targets, testing human responses and gathering intelligence. Rural areas first, then small cities, gradually escalating until the planet's governments understood their helplessness. "Prepare the capture pods," Thakmor ordered. "We'll start with remote locations. I want to see how these humans fight before we commit to full-scale operations." His officers nodded, already anticipating the easy victory ahead. In their thousands of years of conquest, no species had ever successfully resisted Vorthak hunting methods. These soft-skinned humans with their primitive weapons would be no different. The alien ships took position in Earth's outer atmosphere, their advanced sensors mapping every major population center and military installation. To the Vorthak, Humans looked like every other species they had conquered, frightened prey animals waiting to be harvested, but they were about to discover that Earth was unlike any world they had ever encountered. This small blue planet had produced something unique in the galaxy, a species that had evolved not just to survive, but to adapt and overcome any threat through sheer determination and ingenuity. The hunt was about to begin, but the Vorthak had no idea they were about to become the prey. The first attacks came without warning on a quiet Tuesday morning. Across the globe, people went about their normal routines, completely unaware that death was descending from the stars above them. The Vorthak had chosen their initial targets carefully, remote locations where they could test human responses without triggering massive military retaliation. In the rugged mountains of Gangwon Province, a hiking group led by Mountain Rescue, Specialist Jinwoo was making their way along a familiar trail. The morning air was crisp and clean, filled with the sounds of birds and rustling leaves. Jinwoo had led hundreds of groups through these mountains over the years, and today felt like any other peaceful expedition. That changed in an instant when the sky above them suddenly darkened. A massive shadow fell across the mountain trail, as something enormous blotted out the sun. The hikers looked up in confusion, their minds struggling to process what they were seeing. It wasn't a cloud or an aircraft, but something far more alien and terrifying. The Vorthak hunting ship hung silently in the air, its black hull reflecting nothing but darkness. Without any warning or communication, pale blue beams of light shot down from the vessel, enveloping 3 members of the hiking group. The humans caught in the beams found themselves unable to move, their bodies frozen as they were slowly lifted into the air. Jinwoo watched in horror as his friends disappeared into the alien craft, their terrified screams echoing across the mountains. His military training kicked in immediately, years of combat experience overriding the shock and fear that threatened to paralyze him. While everyone else stood frozen in disbelief, Jinwoo was already moving, his mind racing through possible solutions. The alien ship hovered low, apparently confident that the remaining humans posed no threat. This was their first mistake. Jinwoo had spent his entire adult life rescuing people from impossible situations, and he wasn't about to give up now. His backpack contained standard mountain rescue equipment, including rappelling gear and emergency explosive charges used for controlled avalanches. As the Vorthak craft adjusted its position to capture more victims, Jinwoo made a decision that would change everything. Using his climbing expertise, he launched himself upward with a combination of ropes and pure determination, latching onto the ship's hull as it moved through the air. The aliens inside had no idea that their prey had just become the predator. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in a research facility in Daejeon, software engineer Hana was experiencing her own nightmare. She had been working late on a new artificial intelligence project when the Vorthak struck her building. The tractor beam had caught her along with several other researchers, pulling them up into the alien vessel like fish in a net. But unlike the mountain hikers, Hana found herself in the ship's holding area, surrounded by technology that seemed both advanced and strangely familiar. Her engineering mind immediately began analyzing the alien systems, looking for patterns and weaknesses. The Vorthak had made their second mistake by underestimating human curiosity and adaptability. Back on the hunting ship above the mountains, Jinwoo had managed to breach the vessel's outer hull using shaped charges designed for avalanche control. The explosion tore through alien metal like paper, creating an entry point that the ship's designers had never anticipated. As alarms began wailing throughout the craft, Jinwoo dropped into the corridor system, finding himself face to face with his first Vorthak warrior. The alien was massive, nearly twice Jinwoo's height, and covered in thick scales that looked like natural armor. Its yellow eyes blazed with fury as it realized that a human had somehow infiltrated their ship. The creature raised its clawed hands, confident that its size and strength would make quick work of this small intruder. But the Vorthak warrior had spent its entire life hunting prey that either ran away or died quickly. It had never faced an opponent who used the environment itself as a weapon. Jinwoo turned the narrow corridor into a death trap, using emergency bulkheads, exposed wiring, and even the ship's own gravity systems against his opponent. At the same time, Hana had managed to interface with the alien computer network, using principles she barely understood. Her fingers flew across surfaces that responded to touch, her programming background allowing her to recognize patterns in the alien code. What she discovered sent chills down her spine, but also gave her hope. The ship's systems were more vulnerable than the Vorthak realized. Their overconfidence had led them to create networks with minimal security, assuming that no prey species could ever understand their technology well enough to cause damage. Hana began uploading a virus she created on the spot, a piece of code designed to spread chaos throughout their fleet. Commander Thakmor felt his first moment of doubt as he watched the telemetry from his scout ship begin to fail. Warning lights flashed across his command center as reports flooded in about system malfunctions and communication breakdowns. His warriors were trained to handle any form of resistance, but this was something entirely different. The impossible was happening. The prey was fighting back and somehow winning. The news of the alien attack spread across Earth faster than wildfire. Within hours, every government, every military base, and every news station knew that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. But instead of the panic and chaos that the Vorthak expected, something remarkable happened. Humans did what they had always done best when faced with an impossible threat. They adapted, they organized, and they fought back. In Air Force bases across the world, pilots were scrambling to understand the enemy they now faced. Fighter pilot Tai Hyun had been flying F-35 Lightning jets for 8 years, but nothing in his training had prepared him for this moment. The wreckage from Jin Woo's mountain rescue had provided invaluable intelligence about alien technology, and engineers were working around the clock to give human aircraft any advantage they could find. Their ships are fast, but they fly predictably, Tae-hyun explained to his squadron during an emergency briefing. They think like hunters stalking prey, not like fighters facing other fighters. We can use that against them. The modifications to human aircraft happened with shocking speed. Within 48 hours, maintenance crews had jury-rigged alien energy cells into missile guidance systems, giving conventional weapons the ability to track and penetrate Vorthak shields. It wasn't pretty, and half the modifications exploded during testing, but it worked well enough to level the playing field. When the next wave of Vorthak hunters descended on Seoul, they expected to find a defenseless city full of terrified civilians. Instead, they flew into a carefully prepared trap. Tae-hyun led his modified fighters in attack patterns that seemed to make no sense, weaving between buildings and using the city's own structure as cover. The Vorthak pilots found themselves confused and disoriented. Their prey was supposed to run or hide, not attack with coordinated precision. These humans flew like they had been studying alien tactics for years, not days. Every time the hunters tried to lock onto a target, their opponents would disappear into urban canyons or perform maneuvers that should have been impossible for such primitive aircraft. On the ground, Special Operations Commander Minju was orchestrating an entirely different kind of warfare. Her teams had spent the last 72 hours studying alien behavior patterns from security footage and survivor reports. What they discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. The Vorthak were perfect predators, but they had never faced intelligent prey before. They hunt like wolves, Minju explained to her team leaders, pointing at tactical displays showing alien movement patterns. They separate their targets, isolate them, then move in for the kill. But they've never hunted something that could set up ambushes and coordinate attacks. Her soldiers began setting traps throughout major cities, using everything from modified construction equipment to repurposed mining explosives. The key was understanding that Vorthak warriors were driven by hunting instincts that made them predictable. They would always pursue what appeared to be fleeing prey, even when logic should have warned them away. The first major trap was sprung in downtown Busan. A team of Vorthak ground forces, confident in their superior armor and weapons, pursued what they thought was a group of panicking civilians into a shopping district. The humans led them deeper and deeper into the maze of streets and buildings, always staying just barely within sight to keep the aliens interested. What the hunters didn't realize was that every building around them had been rigged with explosives. Every intersection had been turned into a killing field, and every escape route had been blocked. When the trap was finally triggered, the explosion could be seen from orbit. Meanwhile, in a secret laboratory beneath the Seoul National University, nuclear physicist Kyung was working on humanity's most desperate gambit, the alien technology that Hana had managed to steal from the scout ship had revealed a critical weakness in Vorthak defensive systems. Their armor could withstand almost any conventional attack, but it had never been designed to handle rapidly changing electromagnetic frequencies. "It's like their shields are tuned to specific wavelengths," Kyung explained to her exhausted team. "They can block our normal weapons perfectly, but if we can create interference patterns that shift faster than their systems can adapt, we might be able to overload their defenses." The solution was elegant in its simplicity. Human radar installations were modified to broadcast chaotic electromagnetic pulses that made Vorthak equipment malfunction. Their targeting systems would lock onto phantom targets, their communication networks would be flooded with garbage data, and their armor would become vulnerable to conventional weapons. Commander Thakmor watched his carefully planned invasion falling apart in real time. His hunters, warriors who had conquered 1,000 worlds, were disappearing one by one. Their confident battle reports were being replaced by panicked distress calls, and then increasingly by silence. The humans weren't just fighting back randomly. They were learning, adapting, and somehow turning every Vorthak advantage into a weakness. Their primitive technology was being modified and improved at an impossible pace. Their military tactics were evolving in real time, incorporating alien strategies while exploiting alien weaknesses. Most disturbing of all, these humans seemed to fight harder when the odds were against them. Instead of surrendering or fleeing like every other species, they became more dangerous, more creative, and more determined as casualties mounted. For the first time in 4,000 years, the galaxy's apex predators were experiencing fear. 3. Weeks after the first alien attack, humanity was preparing to do something that no species in galactic history had ever attempted. While the Vorthak fleet regrouped in Earth's outer atmosphere, licking their wounds and trying to understand how their perfect hunting strategy had failed so completely, human military leaders were planning the impossible, a direct assault on the alien mothership itself. The plan was born from desperation and human stubbornness in equal measure. Every day that passed, more Vorthak reinforcements arrived from across the galaxy. Earth's defenders had won several battles, but they were losing the war of numbers. The only way to survive was to cut off the head of the snake, no matter how dangerous that might be. Dong Yun, the same mountain rescue specialist who had infiltrated the first scout ship, found himself leading a strike team that read like a collection of humanity's most capable individuals. There was Yejin, a combat medic who had kept soldiers alive in Afghanistan's worst firefights. Jaiwon, a former Navy SEAL who specialized in underwater demolitions. Minseo, an electronics expert who could hack any system given enough time and caffeine. The team spent days studying the mothership's structure, using intelligence gathered from previous raids and prisoner interrogations. The massive vessel was essentially a flying fortress, designed to be impenetrable from the outside. Its armor could withstand nuclear weapons, its shields could deflect energy attacks, and its defensive systems could destroy any approaching craft long before they posed a threat. But the Vorthak had made one critical error in their ship design. Like all apex predators, they had grown overconfident. Their ventilation systems, waste disposal networks, and maintenance tunnels were barely guarded because they never imagined that prey could infiltrate their home base. "We're not going to fight our way in," Dongyun explained to his team as they reviewed the final plans. "We're going to sneak in like mice in the walls, move through systems they don't even think about, and hit them where they least expect it." The insertion itself was a nightmare of precision timing and pure luck. Using modified spacesuits and improvised thruster packs built from captured alien technology, the strike team launched themselves from a crippled satellite that had drifted close to the mothership. They had exactly one chance to reach the ship's hull before its automated defenses detected them. As they landed on the massive vessel's surface, each team member felt the weight of humanity's survival on their shoulders. If they failed, Earth would eventually fall to the endless waves of Vorthak reinforcements. If they succeeded, they might buy their species enough time to develop better defenses or even negotiate some kind of peace. The ship's interior was like nothing they had ever seen before. Corridors stretched for miles in every direction, filled with the constant hum of alien machinery and the distant sounds of thousands of Vorthak warriors going about their daily routines. The strike team moved through maintenance shafts barely, wide enough for human bodies, following blueprints they had memorized and hoping their intelligence was accurate. Yejin proved invaluable as they navigated the ship's maze-like structure. Her medical training had given her an understanding of anatomy and physiology that translated surprisingly well to alien architecture. She could predict where critical systems would be located based on the ship's overall design, guiding the team toward their primary targets. Their first objective was the ship's communication array. If they could isolate the mothership from the rest of the Vorthak fleet, it would prevent reinforcements from coordinating their attacks. Minseo worked her magic on alien control panels, her fingers dancing across surfaces that responded to bioelectric signals rather than mechanical pressure. "Their security protocols are almost non-existent," she whispered in amazement as she accessed the ship's main network. They've never had to worry about internal threats before. One by one, the team systematically disabled critical systems throughout the massive vessel. Power distribution networks were severed, life support systems were compromised, and navigation controls were scrambled beyond repair. The Vorthak crew found themselves dealing with emergencies in every section of their ship, unable to coordinate responses or even communicate effectively with each other. But their success came at a cost. J1 was caught by a patrol while planting explosives in the ship's engine room. His sacrifice bought the team precious time, but it also alerted the remaining Vorthak to the presence of intruders. Suddenly, the strike mission became a race against time, as alien hunters began systematic searches of every corridor and maintenance shaft. The final confrontation came in the ship's command center, where Dong-Yun found himself face-to-face with Commander Thakmor himself. The massive alien warrior stood over 9 feet tall, his scarred hide telling the story of countless victories over lesser species. His yellow eyes burned with rage as he realized that these insignificant mammals had somehow crippled his mighty vessel. "You fight well for prey animals," Thakmor growled, his clawed hands flexing as he prepared to tear the human apart. "But this ends now." Dong-Yun looked around the command center, taking in all the alien technology and the dozens of subordinate officers watching the confrontation. He thought about his daughter back on Earth, about the billions of people counting on him to succeed, and about all the species that the Vorthak had destroyed over the millennia. Then he smiled, holding up a device that looked like nothing more than a collection of wires and circuits jury-rigged together. "You know what the difference is between humans and every other species you've hunted?" Dong-Yun asked calmly. "We don't just fight to survive, we fight to win, and we never give up." The explosion that followed didn't just destroy the command center. It sent a shockwave through the entire mothership, triggering secondary explosions that tore the massive vessel apart from the inside out. As the ship died around them, the surviving Vorthak finally understood what they were truly facing: a species that would rather die fighting than live as prey. The destruction of the Vorthak mothership sent shockwaves across the galaxy that had nothing to do with the massive explosion. Within days, news of humanity's impossible victory was spreading through every space lane, every trading post, and every civilized world. The species that had terrorized the galaxy for 4,000 years had been defeated by a primitive planet that most civilizations had never even heard of. 6 months later, the galaxy was a completely different place. Trade routes that had been abandoned due to Vorthak raids were reopening. Species that had hidden in the dark corners of space for generations were cautiously emerging into the light. And at the center of it all was a small blue planet whose inhabitants had somehow changed the course of galactic history. Seokjin stood in the gleaming halls of the Galactic Council Station, wearing the simple black uniform that had become Earth's diplomatic standard. As humanity's first interstellar ambassador, he carried the weight of representing his entire species to civilizations that had been traveling between stars since before humans discovered fire. Beside him, xenolinguist Ji Young worked with translation, devices that still struggled to handle the variety of alien languages and concepts they encountered daily. The council chamber itself was a wonder of alien architecture, designed to accommodate dozens of different species with wildly different environmental needs. Crystalline beings that communicated through light patterns, shared space with gas cloud entities that spoke in chemical signatures. Insectoid hive minds debated policy with telepathic plant-based civilizations. The humans request full membership in the Galactic Council, announced the session moderator, its mechanical voice translating across multiple frequency ranges. This is unprecedented for a species that achieved interstellar travel less than one standard cycle ago. Murmurs filled the chamber in a dozen different forms of communication. Some civilizations were eager to establish relationships with these new apex predators. Others worried about what humanity's aggressive nature might mean for galactic peace. A few ancient species remembered similar situations from millennia past, when young civilizations had emerged to disrupt the established order. They destroyed. The Vorthak fleet, whispered a representative from the Ethereal Union, their gaseous form shimmering with nervous energy. How did a pre-interstellar species accomplish what we could not do in 4,000 years? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Every species in the chamber had lost worlds, fleets, or entire populations to Vorthak hunting expeditions. The idea that these newcomers had succeeded where everyone else had failed was both inspiring and terrifying. Seokjin rose to address the council, his voice calm and measured despite the magnitude of the moment. Honored representatives, humanity seeks peaceful coexistence with all galactic civilizations. We have no desire to become conquerors or replace one form of tyranny with another. His words were carefully chosen, but everyone in the chamber understood. The unspoken message: humans had proven they could fight when necessary. The question now was whether they could be trusted to use that ability responsibly. In another section of the station, Soo-hyun was meeting with military representatives from various civilizations. The former intelligence officer had been tasked with establishing Earth's defense protocols and helping other species understand human military capabilities without revealing too many secrets. "Your tactics are unlike anything we have studied," admitted General Vortex of the Crystalline Defense Corps, his rocky form reflecting the chamber's lights in patterns that indicated deep thought. "You fought the Vorthak as if you understood their psychology better than species who had been their victims for millennia." Sohyun nodded thoughtfully. "Humans have spent our entire evolutionary history dealing with predators. We learned to think like them, to anticipate their moves, and to use their own instincts against them. The Vorthak were just another type of predator, albeit a very sophisticated one." The meeting was interrupted by an urgent communication from the council chamber. Takmor himself had requested permission to address the assembly, despite being a prisoner of war held in maximum security. The scarred Vorthak commander had been one of the few high-ranking survivors of humanity's devastating counterattack. As the former hunter leader was brought into the chamber under heavy guard, a hush fell over the diverse assembly. His once proud bearing was broken, his yellow eyes no longer holding the confident gleam of an apex predator. The scars from his encounter with human ingenuity were clearly visible across his scaled hide. "Honored Council," Thakmor began, his voice carrying through the translation systems with difficulty. "I come before you not as a conqueror, but as a survivor, who has learned a terrible truth about the galaxy we thought we understood." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts before continuing. "The humans are not like other species. Their world is a death planet where everything evolved to kill everything else. They are not just survivors or fighters. They are the result of millions of years of constant warfare at the genetic level." The chamber erupted in various forms of discussion and debate. Some representatives demanded more details, while others questioned whether Thakmor could be trusted. But the former commander continued, his voice growing stronger as he spoke. "We studied their planet during our preparation," he said slowly. "Every life form on their world exists in a state of perpetual conflict. Their apex predators hunt in coordinated packs. Their prey animals developed intelligence and tool use simply to survive another day. The humans themselves spent thousands of years fighting each other, developing strategies and technologies through constant warfare. Minha, who had coordinated Earth's global defense networks during the invasion, watched from the human delegation area as the full implications of Takmor's words sank in across the chamber. She activated her communication device and transmitted a message that would be remembered for generations. The Galactic Council has requested clarification on humanity's intentions regarding expansion and colonization, she broadcast on all frequencies. Earth's response is simple. We seek to explore, to learn, and to build relationships with peaceful civilizations. However, we will defend ourselves and our allies against any threat, regardless of its size or origin. The message was received and understood across the galaxy within hours. Humanity had announced itself as the new apex predator, but unlike the Vorthak, they offered partnership to those who approached them peacefully. The session concluded with an unprecedented decision: the establishment of human exclusion zones around Earth and its expanding colonies. But these zones were not designed to contain humanity. They were created to protect other species from accidentally provoking a civilization that had evolved from apex predators on a death world. As the representatives dispersed to their home, worlds carrying news of the galaxy's dramatic transformation, one truth echoed through every civilized system. The age of Vorthak dominance was over, and the age of human expansion had begun. The galaxy would never be the same.